I want to start off with a premise, a really important premise. There are 4 important things that we need to take into account before we delve into this fascinating but complex topic. Firstly, as Osler said, there are in truth no specialties in medicine. Since to know fully many of the important diseases, one must be familiar with their manifestations in many organs. And we'll see that the condition that we're dealing with is a multi-system condition. Next, the psychiatrist must be, first and foremost, and all the time, be a physician. In fact, psychiatry is neurology without physical science and calls for diagnostic virtuosity of the highest order. The psychiatrist should not only first be a physician, but ideally a superlative physician. And this is by Henry Miller, a neurologist. So we're going to see that a lot of what we are going to go through today lies in the realm of neuropsychiatry, but this is not only a biological condition. You will see as we go through, particularly on day 3, we will be applying psychoanalytical and psychotherapy principles. And this is one of the conditions where, for a predominantly biological psychiatrist, one will need to sort of expand their knowledge with regards to psychotherapy, because therapeutic alliance, relationship building, trust, and basic psychological principles becomes very important. Similarly, for a psychoanalytical psychotherapist or a psychotherapist who might be specializing in other fields, it becomes extremely important for them to get a really good understanding of the neuroscience in order to apply their psychotherapy in an effective manner. So this is really about bridging the mind-body, or I would say brain-body gap. The next important thing to take into account here is science best progresses through multiple and mutually critical attempts to understand the same problem. Because we will see as we go through this episode, we'll come across loads of terms. We'll come across mast cell activation and EDS, and we'll come across neuroinflammation, a range of diagnoses, hypermobility, POTS, etc. What tends to happen is if we take a single sort of word, we can really get lost, because what we've got to understand is that mast cell activation is linked to POTS. And mast cell activation is also linked to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And Ehlers-Danlos syndrome may be linked to endothelial dysfunction and neurodevelopmental disorders such as ASD and ADHD. So this is really about trying to make connections rather than a single condition and saying, well, I've diagnosed this person with mast cell activation and antihistamine is likely to work. At the milder end of the spectrum, very likely many of these things will work. You see, by the time many of these patients come to see psychiatrists, the lag is 3, 4, up to 10 years even. And in many of these patients, there has been an additional layer of complexity. They are not responding to all of these first, second line treatments, and that's what we'll see in the cases. And therefore, we've got to take a really broad picture. And psychiatry, I think you'll realize as we go through this, can be the missing link, and we can make a huge difference for patients. And finally, I was talking about semantics and words, right? Francis Bacon said it really well. Shoddy and inept application of words lays siege to the intellect in wondrous ways. Words clearly force themselves on the intellect, throw everything in turmoil, sidetrack all of us into empty disputes, countless controversies, and complete fictions. So it's important that when we think about semantics, we understand their limitations as well, that we really try to deconstruct what we're seeing in front of us through a formulation, and then apply our knowledge of neuroscience and psychotherapy and lifestyle interventions to that particular formulation.